Do you love mums, but you wish they had bigger flowers? There's a trick that might just do that. We're going to test it out. So I saw a lady on Facebook that has a page called Terry's Greenhouse and Garden, and she claims that she has a trick to get those flowers to be bigger. Let's take a look. So she said if you get a mum that hasn't bloomed yet, let's look at this one. You'll see that there's a stem and it'll have a bunch of different buds on it. She says if you prune away all of the smaller buds that are on this stem, it'll push more energy into the central bud and it's going to make a bigger flower. So you'll end up, if you do this over this plant, with fewer flowers but bigger flowers all over it. So I've got two identical mums. They're both Wanda yellows. They both have the same size and the same amount of buds. We're going to cut the small buds off of one, leave one alone, and then we're going to measure it once they actually bloom. So I've identified a stem here, and I'm just going to go through and trim off. This is almost the same concept as lollipopping, where you move lower foliage and just leave a bud to develop on certain types of plants that some people like to grow and consume. So that's one done there. So I'm just going to continue this process all over the plant. And we're going to give you a cool time lapse. So you can see the difference here. We have removed roughly 1 million buds from this one versus this one. And I quickly realized during this process that one, I would hate to do this for any longer than just one plant because it's very tedious. Did find out that it's a lot easier just to pinch them off with your fingers rather than getting in there with scissors, and it's way faster that way. But the other thing, obviously it's going to have fewer flowers than this one, but it's also not going to bloom as long because typically with a mum, you're going to have some buds that open up first, and then those ones that open first are going to be fading later in the season. You can deadhead them and pull them off, and then the younger buds are going to take their place. So you can get, 4 weeks or so of flowers out of a mum. This one might only bloom for like a week because we're removing all of those smaller, later developing buds. And so it's going to have one show and then be done. But it might be worth it if these are a lot bigger. So that's what I'm curious about. So I'm going to keep going through this, removing some of the other ones that I haven't removed yet. And then we're going to check on these in a few weeks and see how they look. All right, it has now been 1 month magically since we first recorded that first bit. And so I've got the ruler. Let's take a look at these mums. So first of all, just look at these two plants. They look quite a bit different. They are the exact same variety, but this one has tons and tons of blooms all over it. This one, the blooms are more spaced out. But what we were trying to see is, are these blooms any bigger on this one? So this here is the one that we didn't touch, and to the naked eye, the blooms do appear to be a little bit smaller maybe, but it still has a lot of buds that haven't opened up yet. So there's tons and tons of buds here. This one is just starting to bloom, and it'll continue to bloom. This one, these flowers, potentially a little bit bigger. There are no more buds coming on this plant. So once these flowers that you see are gone, this plant is done for. Whereas this one is going to continue to bloom and open up more buds as the weeks go on. All right, so here's the one that we didn't pull buds off of. Let's measure some of these buds. I'm going to measure in centimeters. So that is about 2 centimeters. This one's a little bigger. Let's see. 2.5 centimeters across. Let's find another one. 2.5 centimeters across. So 2 to 2.5 centimeters across for these flowers. All right, now this one. Are they any bigger? Almost 3 centimeters. Let's see if I can line this up right. Yeah, 2 and 3/4, almost 3. 2.5. Let's get another one. 2.5, nearly 3. How about down here? That's about 3 inches, 3 centimeters across. So maybe so. Yeah, these flowers are slightly bigger than these ones on this plant, but there's fewer of them and they're not going to continue to bloom as long as the ones on this plant. So is it worth it? In this case, probably not. Now, there is something else called spider mums, and spider mums are different varieties of mums, but what they do is instead of peeling off the buds from each individual stem, they actually take away all of the stems from the entire plant except for one, and they allow this entire plant to feed one flower. and that one flower can grow to be quite large. You see this a lot at botanical gardens. So, should you as a homeowner go through that whole process of picking the buds off to maybe get slightly bigger flowers? I don't think so.